Hi, I'm Matt Dixon. I'm our new Master Coach, and today I'm going to give you a little bit of a case study about one of our athletes to try and help us join the dots and create a little context around the theory of the articles of the 10-hour triathlete and start to give it some real reality-based insight into how we might approach this and how you might approach this, integrating the challenge of Ironman and Ironman 70.3 into the big lives that so many of us lead. So as we go through today, we're going to talk about Sally, a classic Ironman athlete who's time crunched. But to do so, we have to take a little step back in time. I want to go back to the habits and the approach that Sally used to use, and then the intervention that we implemented so that she could go on and be successful with her goals. So firstly, let's talk about Sally. Well, she's a participant in financial services, and she's very goal driven. In fact, her goal, much like many Ironman athletes that we coach, is to really aspire to qualify for the Hawaii Ironman World Championships. She views herself as an optimizer, and that means that she wants to excel in everything she does in life. She has very little spare time in her hands, and she's on a quest for that qualification. At the same time, she's really committed to her family. She's got 2 kids, very committed to excelling at work, and it's this thing that's creating passion in her life. So it's a really positive thing. But this is where she ran into trouble. Ultimately, when we started working with Sally a couple of years ago, we really felt like she was overscheduled. Very, very busy, darting from this thing to the next thing, looking to cram in training, which is fine. It's a challenge that many of us face. But ultimately, when she started to moving into the habitual component of training, it was very obvious that she was chasing. She was consistently comparing herself to her friends, and many of her friends were nowhere near as busy. They could absorb greater training loads. They had more time. And that's a really natural emotion. Really competitive, looking to keep up or maybe even beat her friends in a very friendly way. But her friends were much more able to successfully absorb a regular training program, as it were. With Sally, she still had the real tug of her job in financial services, the 2 kids that she was looking after, as well as her husband, of course. And so the natural habits ended up that she was cramming her training, looking to cram training, compromising sleep, and really going through a cycle of eating on the run, often managing little niggles and injuries that she couldn't really keep up with. And so ultimately had this cycle that started to create. Most of her training ended up coming as almost punching the clock, going through, executing, but not having any real differentiation between what were the key sessions, what were the supporting sessions. All of her basis of background success was focused on, I just need to get the plan done. This is how many hours I'm trying to achieve. If I can get them, that is success, and not much beyond that. Of course, coming out of this with compromised sleep, with often eating on the run, she never quite felt like she was succeeding. When she would go up to her races and coming into her races, her focus wasn't on, this is all of the layers of training that I've done over the last months. Instead, her focus always felt like she was failing, always feeling like I'm falling short, and ultimately showing up on a continuation of the path of just being overscheduled. So not really having any more resources to lift her on race day and really give every ounce of energy that she could towards the race. The focus for her was, I missed this session 2 weeks ago, I compromised this session 3 weeks ago, I'm still carrying a dodgy hamstring. So many components that acted to actually build up a wall of fear and build up a wall that was lacking in confidence. And so how can we shift this focus? She's got the draw of her friends, she's trying to accumulate training hours, but ultimately she's not winning at life. She was being compromised in her job at financial services, her family was feeling the strain, and she certainly wasn't getting any closer towards qualification of the Hawaii Ironman. So how do we approach that? How do you approach that as we need to shift our mindset a little bit around what training success is? So for me, the way that I decided to go about it was to say the first thing we want to do is we need to change confidence. We need to build her confidence. We had to create something that echoed consistency. And if we could create consistency, a byproduct, of course, is she would be healthy. She wouldn't be carrying musculoskeletal injuries. She would have more resources. And ultimately, my hope was that she could arrive at race day with confidence because she wasn't focusing on what she'd missed. So how could we create that? Well, there had to be a shift in mindset, and there had to be, for her, a reality in her situation. So the first thing we did is we drew back and looked at her friends and said, this is the situation. Is this truly replicable? Can you actually copy this? And it was a really startlingly simple thing to do, but she realized, no, it's very, very challenging to be able to do this. And so what can we do in your situation? What is the reality of your situation? And how can we navigate it without you showing up to the event feeling underprepared? So let's get into the nuts and bolts of what we actually did. We shifted the lens and said, let's talk about optimization. As we went towards her first Ironman block, about 12 weeks of training, we identified 3 or 4 weekends that were going to be Sally weekends. She got permission from work, family, husband to go out and play, be able to go and put some big Ironman focused blocks in over the course of the weekend. And that really enabled her to say, these are my weekends, everyone knows about it, I'm scheduled for them, and I can go and put in some good solid work. For the weekends between those where we had to bridge, we focused on consistency and optimization. The second thing that we did is we wanted to start the Ironman ramp off about 12 weeks again with a real confidence builder. So we did 2 things. The first is we did a little mini running block at the start. Enabled her to establish a good platform of run resilience, hitting 3 endurance runs really carefully prescribed on soft surface for the most part to give her the feeling of a little bit of resilience. And we finished that little run block with a little riding tour. 2 or 3 days of back-to-back rides where she could go out for an extended duration and, as we say, bank the miles. It was a huge catalyst for her because while typically she has a compressed time schedule to train, this was the one opportunity to go away and bank a bunch of miles so that then she had more confidence in saying, I'm going to go with a more efficient mindset with my training overall. We then went into 6 weeks or so of training where we focused on very strength-driven training, a lot of hill running, a lot of low cadence on the bike, a more moderate volume with a bit more intensity on most of the key sessions. We then prioritized the slightly reduced training hours with not increasing that little time, those 3 hours a week that we're not training, with more work hours, but instead time for her to sleep, time for her to recuperate. We then built habits, non-negotiable habits around integrating time to actually eat. Became very, very important. Over the course of many weeks, we ended up saying, let's actually think about doing 13 or 14 hours a week of really, really good training versus doing 17 hours a week where you're just punching the clock and going through. Actually, ironically, as we fast forward now to this year, she's become even more busy and we've taken it a step further and we've moved from 13 or 14 hours to 10 to 12 hours a week of training, more in tune with the actual theme of the program. The great thing is results have not diminished. So what happened at the end with Sally? Well, the padding of the initial miles gave her confidence and it diluted her internal need to chase her partners and her friends and to actually bank big miles every single weekend. And that provided an opportunity with us. The focus of the training with a little bit more intensity, a little bit more strength endurance, and we'll get to those sort of details in subsequent articles, but that intensity gave us some real production in higher power, higher sustainable pace. After completing many weeks of 12 to 14 hours really, really well, without too much deep fatigue, without any interruption with injury, she ended up feeling like there was this huge shift. Physiologically, improvement in power, improvement in pace, that's wonderful. But it's the way that she looked in the mirror at herself athletically that really changed. I have been consistent, I have been training well, and no longer was her barometer of I have to hit 17 hours. Instead it was, I want to hit 12 to 14 hours really, really well and be healthy. So what happened at the end of this? Well, the first time that she raced, she had a great Ironman. She did better. She had great improvements all the way across. But the biggest thing, the big litmus, was she enjoyed the race experience. And so out of that, she built confidence, and she actually shifted the way that she viewed herself. The qualification no longer was this aspirational dream. It became something that was really able to be touched in many ways. So the first part of it was, no, she didn't qualify. She didn't actually achieve her dream, but she created a really solid platform that was a building block of confidence that then she could go back through the recycle in a second Ironman of the year and try and execute again. Within 18 months, she was a Hawaii Ironman qualifier. She's about an hour faster than she was about 2 years ago over the course of a similar Ironman race distance, with course and weather, of course, all aligned. And a really confident, healthy athlete. And it's very achievable. It really is achievable. But the biggest thing for her was having the courage, the true courage, to take a step back, have a healthy dose of pragmatism, and actually apply smart lessons to training versus what our friends are doing over there. They're still competitive, they're still improving, they're doing their great training within the scope of their life, but for Sally, it was all about optimization, and that was the thing that was the rich reward, both for her enjoyment and ultimately her results. I hope that helps. Cheers.